Chapter 1, The Hexagon of Power, the Interface of Tomorrow. Welcome to Synapse Daily. Close your eyes. Imagine it is July 1972. You are in downtown Santiago, Chile. The world outside is screaming. There are protests, food shortages, and political fire. But you step inside a hidden room. This is the ops room. The room is a perfect hexagon. Why a hexagon? Because nature uses hexagons for strength. Think of a beehive. It is the shape of collective intelligence. The walls are lined with dark Chilean wood. But the furniture is pure sci-fi. 7 white fiberglass chairs face each other. They don't look like office chairs. They look like thrones for a digital age. Look at the armrests. There are no keyboards here. Stafford Beer hated keyboards. He thought they were barriers. He wanted executive action. On the right armrest, you see big, chunky buttons. They are geometric, circles, squares, triangles. You press a red circle, and the wall lights up. These walls are not posters. They are data feeds. Huge, backlit screens showing the pulse of Chile. You see the production of coal. See the distribution of milk. All in real time. This was the first dashboard in history. In our previous discussions, we looked at how the design was finalized in 1971. But being inside this room is different. It feels like the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. But this wasn't for space travel. It was for economic survival. The goal was simple, to make the economy feel its own problems. If a factory in the north stopped, the red light in this room would blink. No memos. No months of waiting. Just instant truth. This was the brain Allende needed to save his country. Chapter 2, The Architect and the Wizard, Beer and Allende. To understand this, we must go back to the meeting of two giants. On one side, Salvador Allende, a doctor who wanted to heal a nation. On the other side, Stafford Beer, a British genius with a wizard's beard and a brain full of mathematics. In 1971, Chile was in trouble. As we noted in our earlier videos about the 1966 planning phase, the transition to socialism was messy. Allende had nationalized hundreds of companies. But he had no way to manage them. He was flying a plane with no cockpit instruments. He sent a letter to Beer. Beer was the father of cybernetics. He believed every organization is a living organism. He called his model the Viable System Model, VSM. He told Allende, "I can build you a nervous system." Beer arrived in Chile and fell in love with the vision. He didn't want a big brother system. He wanted workers to have power. He wanted the system to be decentralized. If a factory could fix its own problem, the government wouldn't interfere. This was the big mother philosophy. They worked in a fever. They drank wine, smoked cigars, and drew diagrams on napkins. They weren't just building a computer network. They were building a new way for humans to live together. But the clock was ticking. The CIA was already watching. The dream was beautiful, but the ground was shaking. Chapter 3, The Telex Network, the 500 Nerves. How do you build an internet with no internet? This is the most incredible part of the story. Chile only had one mainframe computer, an IBM 3650. It was slow. It was old. And Chile had almost no telephone lines. But Beer was a master of stupid smart technology. He found 500 Telex machines in a warehouse. These were old telegraph printers. He sent them to the ends of the country. From the copper mines in the Atacama to the fisheries in the south. Every day, workers would type their data into these machines. We produce 10 tons today. We are low on oil. This data traveled through radio waves and old copper wires. It landed in the brain in Santiago. This was the birth of Cyberstride. It was a software that used Bayesian statistics to filter the data. It ignored the noise. It only alerted the ministers if something was out of control. Think about the scale. In 1972, the United States didn't even have this. The Soviet Union was trying to build something similar but failed because of bureaucracy. Chile, a small, developing nation, had 500 live nerves connecting the people to the palace. As we discussed in our video about the technical infrastructure, this wasn't just about numbers. It was about time. Cybersyn reduced the delay of information from 6 months to 1 day. In the world of economics, that is the difference between life and death. Chapter 4, The October Strike, the First Digital War. The world's first cyber war didn't happen in the 90s. It happened in October 1972. The CIA and the opposition launched a massive capitalist strike. 40,000 truck owners stopped their engines. They blocked the roads. They wanted to starve the cities. They wanted to kill the Allende government by cutting the food supply. The government was paralyzed. The traditional channels were broken. But then, they turned to the Telex network. The Cybersyn team worked 24 hours a day. They used the 500 Telex machines to find every loyal truck. They found every open road. They used the data to move food where it was needed most. It was a miracle of logistics. While the strikers were waiting for the government to collapse, the government was using real-time data to bypass the blockade. They coordinated 200 trucks to do the work of thousands. In our previous video about the 1969 to 1971 CIA interference, we saw the planning of this destabilization. But Cybersyn was the shield. It proved that information could defeat raw power. The strike failed. Allende stayed in power. But this victory was a curse. It showed the enemies of Chile that Cybersyn was too powerful. It showed them that they couldn't win with strikes. They needed something much more violent. They needed a coup. The ghost in the machine had saved the day, but now, the machine was a target. Chapter 5, The Design Ethics, No Keyboards, Just Power. Let's look closer at the chairs. Why no keyboards? We must understand this. In 1972, computers were for experts. They were for tech priests in white coats. Stafford hated this. He wanted the people in charge to be human. He believed keyboards were low level. He thought typing was a distraction from thinking. This is why he used the big, colorful buttons. One button for steel. One button for coal. It was the first user-friendly interface. But there was a deeper reason. Cybersyn was a tool for decentralization. In our earlier video about the 1963 VSM theory, we saw how systems must be autonomous. Beer wanted the factory workers to solve their own problems. The ops room was only for big emergencies. It was designed to prevent a dictatorship of data. Beer feared a system where one man controlled everything. He wanted a big mother that supported everyone, not a big brother that watched everyone. This design was a political statement. It said, technology should be simple so that people can remain in control. But as the political heat in Chile reached a boiling point, the simple buttons became tools of life and death. The room was no longer just an office. It was a war room. Chapter 6, The Algedonic Loop, the Happiness Meter. Now, let's talk about the most radical idea of Project Cybersyn. It was called the Algedonic Loop. The name comes from the Greek words for pleasure and pain. Stafford didn't just want to track coal and steel. He wanted to track human happiness. He planned to put a device in every Chilean home. It was a small box with a dial. If you were happy with the government, you turned the dial to pleasure. If you were angry or hungry, you turned it to pain. These signals would travel in real time to the ops room. Think about this. This was 1972. There was no Twitter. There was no Facebook. But Beer was building a like button for a whole country. He wanted the government to feel the pain of the people instantly. If the pain meter in a certain neighborhood spiked, the ministers would see it. They would know that the milk delivery was late. they would know that the electricity was out. Critics today call this surveillance. But Beer saw it as the ultimate democracy. He wanted to replace voting every 4 years with feedback every 4 seconds. He wanted a government that responded like a living body. But the pain was about to become too real for the machine to handle. Chapter 7: The Shadow of the CIA, Operation Fubelt. While Beer was dreaming of happiness meters, others were dreaming of regime change. As we discussed in our video about the 1969 to 1971 CIA interference, the United States was terrified of Chile. Richard Nixon had famously ordered the CIA to make the economy scream. This was Operation Fubelt. The CIA knew about Cybersyn. They didn't see it as a socialist internet. They saw it as a Soviet-style brain. They feared that if Chile succeeded, other countries would follow. They used every trick in the book. They funded the trucker strikes. They blocked international loans. They even tried to sabotage the IBM computer. But Cybersyn kept working. It kept finding ways to keep the country moving. This created a digital arms race. On one side, the Cybersyn team was using data to create order. On the other side, the CIA was using money and propaganda to create chaos. Stafford Beer began to realize that his system was being hunted. He spent his nights drinking and worrying. He knew that even the best algorithm cannot stop a bullet. The shadow was growing longer. The 1973 coup was no longer a if. It was a when. Chapter 8, September 11, 1973, The Storming of the Ops Room. The end did not come with a system error. It came with Hawker Hunter jets. On the morning of September 11, 1973, the military launched a coup. They bombed the presidential palace. President Allende gave his final speech on the radio. He died shortly after. But there was another target. The soldiers marched toward the building on Santa Maria Avenue. They entered the ops room. Imagine the scene. The soldiers, with their heavy boots and rifles, stood in the middle of the future. They saw the white fiberglass chairs. They saw the glowing data feed screens. They didn't see a miracle of science. They saw communist magic. They began to smash the room. They used their bayonets to rip the backlit screens. They kicked over the swivel chairs. They cut the Telex wires that connected the country. The brain of Chile was being lobotomized. The soldiers didn't want a system that listened to the people. They wanted a system that silenced them. The Cybersyn team fled for their lives. Fernando Flores was captured and sent to a prison camp. Stafford Beer, back in London, felt his heart break. The room was gone. The dream was dead. The future had been executed in a hexagonal room. Chapter 9: The Destruction, the Aftermath of a Dream. The silence after the coup was deafening. The ops room was no longer a place of hope. It was a crime scene. The military government didn't just stop the project. They tried to erase it from memory. They saw the Telex machines as tools of subversion. The white chairs, once symbols of a new era, were thrown into storage or destroyed. The software, Cyberstride, was deleted. The military leaders didn't believe in decentralization. They believed in command and control. They replaced the brain of Cybersyn with a much older, darker system, a secret police force called the DINA. Instead of tracking happiness with Algedonic loops, they tracked dissent with torture and fear. The data was no longer about making the economy work. It was about making the people obey. The tragedy of Cybersyn is that the very technology meant to free the workers was replaced by a system that enslaved them. Chapter 10: The Exile, the Wizard in the Woods. Back in the United Kingdom, Stafford Beer was a changed man. The death of Allende and the destruction of Cybersyn broke something inside him. He felt responsible. He felt that his brain had failed its body. He left his expensive life behind. He moved to a small, remote cottage in the hills of Wales. There was no electricity in his workspace. He spent his days painting and writing poetry. He didn't stop believing in cybernetics. But he became a critic of how it was being used. He saw that corporations were starting to use his ideas not for freedom, but for profit. He warned the world. He said, "The purpose of a system is what it does. If a system creates poverty, then its purpose is poverty." He lived as a hermit, watching from afar as the world slowly built a version of his socialist internet, but for all the wrong reasons. He died in 2002, a wizard who had seen the future, only to watch it be burned to the ground. Chapter 11, The Legacy in Big Tech, Cybersyn 2.0? Fast forward to today. We look at companies like Amazon, Uber, and Tesla. What do we see? Amazon uses real-time data to manage thousands of robots and workers. They use predictive algorithms to know what you want to buy before you even know it. This is exactly what Beer was doing with Cyberstride. Uber manages a global fleet of cars with a digital nervous system. It tracks supply and demand in real time. This is exactly what the Cybersyn team did during the October strike. But there is a massive difference. Cybersyn belonged to the people. Today's systems belong to billionaires. We have the Algedonic loops today, we call them likes and shares. But they aren't used to tell the government we are hungry. They are used to keep us addicted to our screens. We have the ops room in our pockets, our smartphones. But we are not the ministers, we are the data points being tracked. The dream of a public brain has become the reality of private surveillance. Chapter 12, Lessons for 2026, The Digital Crossroads. So, why does this matter in 2026? Why should you care about a failed experiment from 1972? Because we are at a crossroads. We are building artificial intelligence that is more powerful than anything Stafford Beer ever imagined. We are building a global nervous system that connects every human on Earth. The question remains the same: who controls the buttons? Project Cybersyn proves that technology can be used for the common good. It proves that we can manage an economy without destroying the planet or the people. But it also proves that technology is fragile. It can be crushed by those who fear transparency. As we move deeper into the age of AI, we must decide if we want a big brother that watches us, or a big mother that supports us. We must decide if we want our data to be a weapon or a tool. Chapter 13, The Final Signal, The Ghost Lives On. Project Cybersyn was only alive for about 2 years. It never reached its full potential. But it remains one of the most important what-ifs in human history. What if the coup had never happened? What if Chile had succeeded in building a digital democracy? Perhaps the world would be a very different place today. Perhaps the internet would be a tool for liberation instead of a marketplace for our attention. The ops room is gone. The chairs are dust. But the idea is still there. The ghost in the machine is still whispering to us. It tells us that a better world is possible through the intelligent use of information. It tells us that the heart and the brain must work together. Thank you for traveling back to 1972 with us. This has been Synapse Daily. The future isn't something that happens to us. It is something we build one button at a time. Like this video if you learned something new. Comment your thoughts below. Could Cybersyn have worked in today's world? And don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating stories from the edge of history and technology. Until next time, keep your loops open and your data true.